and that's all. The New York Knicks are the NBA champions. A result that I didn't think I'd be saying at the beginning of the season. Even having them coming out of the East, right? I thought, in a weak Eastern Conference, yeah, they might run through it, right? I think a lot of people, especially toward the beginning of the season, more so later, especially right after the postseason, a lot of the people saw the Knicks as a favorite, and their regular season play did nothing to back it up. But man, the New York Knicks, a team that's been defined by heartbreak, right? Heartbreaks and failures. We can go back far. We can go back to Ewing days, the Allen Houston days, right? We go back to the 2010s with the Carmelo Anthony era, and which was, I mean, I you can sugarcoat it all you want, right? But that era was a failure to get Carmelo Anthony and to the big city of New York to surround him with pieces like Amari Stoudemire and to not even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm pretty sure they never made an appearance. Was just a failure of an era, right? No matter how you slice it. And then there was the 2019 offseason, which was supposed to be a big splash, supposed to get Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Zion Williamson. And then the lottery fails. You guys get the third pick after losing, franchise star Kristaps Porzingis. You guys use your money to sign Julius Randle instead of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving as they go across town to Brooklyn. And there was just so much failure like that. There was obviously Tyrese Halliburton's crazy shot, doing the choking celebration. Jalen Brunson signing a huge contract, which many people thought was an overpay, right? At the time, coming straight out of Dallas, right? Which obviously led to him eventually taking a pay cut. But there was a reason why a lot of Knicks fans had a unoptimistic view, a pessimistic view of this Knicks team heading into this postseason, even when things were going well, because they got off to a rough start against Atlanta. Not to mention, right? That series was 2-2, and no, in Atlanta was even up 2-1 at one point. There was a lot of questions about the Knicks after struggling in that series, but man, did they come out to play for the rest of it, sweeping Philly, sweeping Cleveland, in knocking off the San Antonio Spurs in 5 games in a series which they were pretty significant underdogs. I'm not going to say it was huge, right? There's been years like they're not underdogs in the sense that the Dallas Mavericks were underdogs against the Celtics 2 years ago, but they were pretty big underdogs in the series, and they came out and they showed up. All these players, and isn't hindsight something, right? Because in hindsight, I can see all championship teams, right? They have these guys, like for example, last year I would say Alex Caruso, and then Derek White before that, maybe Bruce Brown before that, or no, I don't know, Andrew Wiggins before that, Bobby Portis before that. They got these role players that just feel like championship players. They have the attitude of champions, the way they carry themselves. And how did we not see it with this Knicks team, right? They have so many guys like that. OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges. Like Mikal Bridges, he went 3 years in a row without missing a game or something like that. Like these guys obviously have the heart of champions. So isn't hindsight something like how didn't we see it out of this team, right? We talk about the knocks on all these players, right? Especially on Jalen Brunson, all the doubts that he's had to go through, them viewing his contract as an overpay, and then him taking a pay cut later on, right? Just so this Knicks team can build around him, right? We talk about the knocks of him being too small, Karl Anthony Towns, and his defense, right? And him not playing like a traditional big, and him in the playoffs, right? So much adversity that these guys had to go through, and they overcame it, and it was just great to see, right? And another thing that stands out about this series is how it's going to affect the NBA discourse, right? Like one thing I think about that is huge, right? And obviously, congratulations to this Knicks team who just won. But our discourse is going to be surrounded by ring culture and what it means at this point, right? Like I've been seeing a lot of like, oh, top 10 players in the NBA, which I'll have my own list out soon. So you'll actually get to see my opinion on this. But for now, like this offseason is going to be dominated, I think, by Luka versus Brunson talks, right? Because obviously Brunson winning a ring is going to put him in these like top 5 talks, top 7 talks. And Luka, who is probably the biggest star left to not win a ring, is going to be like a main culprit of these discussions. So I think things might get interesting, right, on the Luka Doncic conversations this offseason, when he's compared to guys who have actually won, right? And a lot of the arguments that are going to be used in Luka's favor, maybe him being the more talented player, obviously. Well, if we're talking about execution, even though I would say most would pick Luka over Brunson, Brunson's execution has been just as good, right? We talk about the numbers that we can pull up, right? Because Brunson, over the past 5 years, is by far and away the leading playoff scorer, right? Uh, he's ahead of Shea and he's ahead of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Obviously, part of that has to do with the Knicks being in the mix, over the past 5 years, always winning playoff series. But it still says a lot, about him as a superstar that, even if we just look at individual performances, he's number one over the past 5 years in like 40-point games, 35-point games, and 30-point games. So Brunson's obviously been dominant, and he's been the most dominant scorer in the NBA, at least in the postseason, I would say, over the past 5 years. I'd say overall, it's probably still Shea, right? But I had a cut because I realized when I said Luka is the biggest star left without winning a ring, I kind of forgot about Wemby because once Wemby beat OKC this year in the playoffs, that moment felt so huge that it kind of felt like his own ring, right? And it kind of felt like after a moment like that, it was kind of inevitable Wemby would end up with the championship this year, but nah, the Knicks still end up winning it. So yeah, getting more into the adversity some of these guys went through though. Karl Anthony Towns, obviously, I think he might have went through the most, right? I mean, we're talking about in the past few years, Cat uh got rear-ended, which I didn't even know about this, right? And I haven't even dived into the story, but he got rear-ended in an accident that left him with a 5% chance to live. Something I heard about. I don't know if this was recent. I just know what happened, right? And then there was like uh obviously his mother passing away to COVID-19, and I didn't know he also had 7 other family members that had COVID-19, and he even contracted it himself, which made him lose like 50 pounds. He got hit by a drunk driver in LA too. Once again, like I don't know how I haven't heard any of these stories, but these are all things that Cat has had to deal with, and him winning his ring, his emotion was the highest, right? Like when Brunson won the ring, he was just so like speechless, right? His emotions wouldn't let him speak. Cat had the opposite effect. He was so excited. He was the real leader at the end there, like lifting up the trophy for everyone. He It was great to see Cat get his ring once again. And another thing that I've seen like dominate NBA discourse recently is like the way the Knicks built this championship team, right? And like how other teams can kind of learn from it, right? And it's a sentiment that I've just hated, right? And it's been happening heavily around like the Detroit Pistons. I feel like on because they feel like they're in a similar situation to what the Knicks were like probably a few years ago, and uh, there's like a lot of questions about the Pistons and what they can do, what they can learn from the Knicks and do similar moves. But it's like, do we not realize that every NBA championship team is built so uniquely? And I know they should make big moves, right? Because that's how you win. But like, just to try to compare it and say like, oh, what they could have learned from the Knicks, I think is kind of stupid because once again, every NBA champion has been built like so uniquely. So we shouldn't expect like a team like Detroit to just do exactly what New York did. But we could finally focus on the other side of this discussion, on a little negative note about San Antonio, which was a team that after winning that series against OKC, like I said before, it was such a huge win, an upset, and it felt like that was their NBA championship. They sure celebrated like it, right? You saw the emotion from Wemby, which no shame on him, right? Like I think his emotion there was a good thing. And after going through a hard fought series like that, it felt inevitable that they were going to win, and they just didn't win. Even though, despite they led 72% of that series, but something I didn't know, right? And once again, the minutes were the Spurs led 173 minutes to the Knicks, what 56, right? Which is crazy, series where the Knicks won in 5. But despite all of that, the Spurs only had the advantage in the first quarter, which they had the advantage by 57 points. But the Knicks won the second, third, and fourth quarters throughout the series, which is something that's going to go underlooked, right? When Wemby talks about how the Spurs dominated for most of the series in his interview. And when people talk about how, they led through most of the series, I think that might get lost because most of the time where San Antonio led was just the Knicks slowly chipping at that lead because the Spurs, when they go on a run, it's quick, right? We saw it throughout this postseason how quick they can go on a 10-0 run, a 15-0 run, right? And it happens in like a minute or two. The Knicks, when they go on these runs, they've been shorter. They may have involved getting to the line a little bit, just slowly chipping at that lead, which goes to show why the Spurs, despite leading, 70% of the series, only won the battle in the first quarter, which ultimately led to their defeat. A stat that stood out to me that I didn't find till today, which I saw on Twitter, so I don't know what the source is, but I saw that Jalen Brunson, his defensive field goal percentage was 38.2, which was better than Wemby's, which was 42.7, which obviously, had to do with the fact that Wemby got tired very easily because of the way he was being guarded by OG and Cat. But just still, like, something crazy to think about, for a unanimous. Oh, oh my God. Yeah, just a huge choke from the Spurs, and the numbers really show on how this was a choke, right? It's obviously gonna be a choke, blowing every game in the series by double digits. When you were up by double digits, excuse me, in every game of the series, and still find a way to lose and lose in 5, right? Yeah, they even led by 29 and lost in game 4. So just obviously a huge choke from these guys, and the way they handled it, right, is kind of causing controversy, especially Wemby, right? And people were like, "Oh, this is a aura gamble," right? When Wemby's out there talking about, "Oh, I think everyone knows we're gonna do it," right? And I think even though it's looked upon it, that like badly on the way he says these things, right? It kind of gave, at least me, right, a little like I thought they were gonna win in Game 5 just because of the way Wemby seemed so confident and didn't lose his confidence throughout the series, right? And I see in which ways, like the way that Wemby's talking, it's obviously different and it can be viewed negatively just because like it kind of feels like he's trying to downplay the Knicks a little bit, right? With his confidence. But I heard Chris Broussard talk about this, and I thought it was interesting because we all know Wemby's different, right? In the way that he speaks, right? And the way that he talks to the media. And it kind of goes to show his ambition, which is what Chris Broussard talked about. He kind of compared it to LeBron when they were up 2-1 against Dallas and they were just laughing in the interview. And it's like that kind of confidence comes from having a lot of ambition because you could tell Wemby wants to take on that role of, face of the league, just like LeBron did. So, yeah, a lot of it really can be, you know, looked at as just their ambition, which I think is an interesting way to put it. And I really like the way that Chris Broussard put it. And yeah, but I don't know. This offseason is going to be really interesting. Happy for the New York Knicks and congratulations to the Knicks fans, despite the Knicks fans. I think obviously well deserved, right? This is one of the most loyal fan bases in sports, right? They go hard for their team, but violence should never be used. And obviously, it's not all Knicks fans, right? It's just those small groups in New York that are jumping Spurs fans and causing wreckage. And I just don't think I think away fans being at playoff games is a part of the experience, and it should always be. There should be no fear in flying out to a different arena to for a game to root for your team. Uh, but once again, the Knicks well deserved for their fans, right? A lot of their fans have just been there for years and years and years, and this payout, this payoff was definitely all that they can ask for. And I'm surprised that the Knicks social media team, I haven't seen any statements out of them about the carnage that happened. So it's something I honestly hope to see. Right, I really hope their social media teams put something out just to not incentivize the fans to do the things that they've been doing. But that's all, and congratulations to the New York Knicks, the 2026 NBA champions.